Hey, Buff Nation, welcome to Ralphie's Rundown with Rick. You like the alliteration there? Voice of the Buffs, Mark Johnson, Athletic Director Rick George. This is what we're talking about, the NIL landscape, which is kind of this new world of college athletics we're all trying to figure out right now. And so we got the answer man here with us.
Well, I don't know if I have all the answers, but certainly, I feel good about where we are today.
Yeah.
I don't think the NIL landscape was ever supposed to look like it does today. I do have my concerns with where this is going and what's happened over the last few months, but we've got good programs in place here at Colorado, and the CU Buffs NIL exchange is going to be really important for our student athletes, for them to be able to monetize their name, image, and likeness, and to help them grow their brand, and also to help companies grow their brand.
You know, as Rick talks about, it's kind of a fluid situation across the country. So the best you're trying to do here in Boulder, Colorado, with the University of Colorado, kind of take us through the exchange and what that looks like and what it means right now.
Yeah, I guess the first thing that I would say is, we're going to do things that are within the framework of the NCAA and what was intended for NIL. And the NIL, the CU Buffs NIL exchange, that's really a platform for our student athletes. And it's an exchange where the company can come on the exchange, the student athlete, they can connect via the exchange and create a business transaction that will help them down the road with tax implications and a 1099 and those kind of things. So we think the platform and the exchange is the right way for us to go. It will allow our student athletes to connect with multiple businesses on NIL opportunities, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out over the next several months.
You know, one thing I've always been impressed with Rick, there are people that are the leaders of organizations that don't often have conversations with those that they oversee, if you will. I see you talking with student athletes all the time. I mean, you know them by name. I'm always amazed by your interaction with them. What are you hearing from them about kind of this new area we're into?
Well, look, I think they all want to figure out how they can monetize their name, image, and likeness. Mm-hmm. And we've done a great job in our Scripps Leadership and Career Development Department with Buffs with a Brand. It was recognized nationally by Sports Illustrated a year ago on what we were doing in that space to educate our student athletes. And so I think the key thing is educating them on how they can monetize their brand, and then putting this exchange together that will allow them to interact more with companies on what those opportunities are. And as I said before, we're going to do it the right way.
Yeah.
We're not going to do things that could be looked at as inducements or tampering. We're not going to do that. We're going to do it the Colorado way. We've promised our student athletes that we're going to create a world-class experience for them. We've got incredible programming for our student athletes. This is just another layer on that we think is important for their long-term success.
So for anybody out there that may have a business or organization that wants to get involved with this, it's pretty simple, right? Just go to the exchange and get yourself registered?
Yeah, that's it. Just get yourself registered, and then our team in the athletic department will look at that request. They'll get everything moving, and then our student athletes in that company will be able to talk and be able to create a transaction that's business related.
Awesome. Well, everybody involved in this that's viewing this tonight has been submitted some questions. Let's go ahead and jump into some of them. David from Littleton drops us our first question. He says, is the NIL exchange yielding anything so far for athletes? 10 days ago, he said, I signed up with my company for the NIL to explore the opportunities to reach players. We do $10 million in revenue. He said, I haven't heard anything at this point in time. Is there something that he should be doing? Or?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we just went live with the platform last week. And so that takes a little bit of time for us to do that, to vet the companies that are, putting their names and their companies on our exchange, and then our student athletes going on and exploring what those opportunities are. So you'll see a lot more transactions moving forward, but we wanted to make sure that we got the platform set up correctly, which we have, and we went live last week. So we think that you'll start seeing some transactions come about.
Rick just touched on something that I hadn't thought about, but the idea of vetting those involved. You want to make sure that we got legitimate circumstances for all the student athletes.
Yeah, I mean, look, we when the companies come through, we evaluate that our team does, and then they go live on the exchange. Our student athletes go live on the exchange, and again, they create a business transaction that they can help monetize. And look, I think it's going to be great for our student athletes to further grow their brand, but it's also going to be great for these companies to be able to grow their business.
Sure.
And we want to talk about growth a lot as we move forward.
Here's an extra from Tom and Kathy in Westminster. I hadn't thought about this either. Can an individual get involved in the NIL from the sponsor side.
Yes, they can.
Yeah,
An individual, as long as it's a legitimate business transaction,
Okay.
an individual can go on there and they can communicate with that student athlete via the exchange and then create a business transaction.
All right, Chris from Highlands Ranch, we kind of touched on this. She was asking about the NIL business or corporations, how individuals can participate. We kind of touched on the registration. Justin sends us a question. He says, how do you measure the success of your NIL efforts?
Well, again, I think the success is going to be in growth, right? It's like anything else. A student athlete can grow their brand. That's going to be a way we measure it. A company being able to grow their business, that's another way that we can measure our growth. But those will be the factors that we'll look at as we talk about how do we know it's successful. But giving our student athletes more opportunities to monetize their name, image, and likeness will be a really important component to the whole operation.
Next up, Michelle from San Diego. This is interesting. We'll see you create opportunities to support entire teams. If you want to, oversee or help out with the women's tennis team or the skiing team instead of just an individual, is that a possibility?
Yeah, the NIL will allow student athletes and teams to have a group licensing program with a company. A company will go on just like they would before and say, I want to do this for an entire team, and then they'll make the connection through the exchange.
Next up is Kirk right here in Boulder. Has the changing landscape of college football left CU at a disadvantage in recruiting star high school players?
No, I don't think so. Look, I think at the end of the day, this will calm down probably in the next 14 months. I don't like what's going on out there, but I know we're going to go out there and we're going to do things the right way. This platform is going to allow us to do that. But look, if you look nationally on where this is, it's kind of a convergence of the NIL space and the transfer portal. The transfer portal, there's no penalty to transfer one time. And then you've got NIL that some schools could potentially be using as inducements. And so when those two have converged, you've created this bigger problem. In my opinion, it's a problem that we have to fix. We have to put guidelines around name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal. Going to be really important for us moving forward, but I don't see that happening for the next 14 months. And because we have midterm elections, we need a federal antitrust exemption that we don't currently have that would be helpful in this space. But we have got to put some guidelines around the NIL and the transfer portal, timing, what opportunities are fair market value, inducements, tampering, all those things need to be addressed in the coming months.
So as involved as you are in leadership organizations and committees, if you will, around NCAA, is it at least on the table? Is it being talked about? If it's not going to happen in 14 months, is it being discussed right now so they're thinking about it?
Well, I think everybody's discussing it.
Okay.
I think you've got coaching groups that are discussing it. You've got AD groups. You've got NCAA. You've got the Football Oversight Committee, maybe the Men's and Women's Basketball Oversight Committee, and others that are talking about these things that are going on in the transfer portal and in NIL. Again, it's important for us at Colorado that we do it the right way, that we use the resources that we have. We first and foremost provide a great education for our student athletes to get that degree. And then this program that we have, the Crawford Family Whole Student Athlete, is kind of the umbrella that allows us to create this world-class experience to make our experience at Colorado help the student athletes be life ready when they leave CU.
Next up is Dennis from Denver. Can the NIL focus on a particular business school student athlete? For example, we've got let's say a golfer that is in the business school. I really want to talk to those kind of students. We can specifically look at those kind of things?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. Next up is Dan from Littleton. Many of our current Colorado Buffaloes have entered the transfer portal. You just talked about that. What's driving these student athletes to jump into it and leave the program?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of reason. Again, it's not a CU Buff problem. And certainly we have our own problems here locally, but nationally it's a bigger problem. Of the 1,800 student athletes, football student athletes that have gone into the portal, only 54% have a home right now. And so that means 46% doesn't have, and that's concerning.
Yeah.
Because remember, we want them to get an education, we want to get them a degree, but if they're in the transfer portal and they don't have that opportunity to matriculate at another institution, that's a bigger problem nationally that we have to fix. And so when I talk about fixing NIL and I talk about fixing the transfer portal, there's ways that we can do that will allow our student athletes to explore an opportunity, but also have some protections both for the student athlete and for the institution.
Part of what you're talking about, the wide open aspect of the portal, I think student athletes are going to learn from this process as well, for the reason you're talking about. Maybe they're jumping into the abyss and not having a landing spot, and they're going to learn from that, I think, as time goes on.
Yeah, look, I mean, in the way the portal is set up, once a student athlete goes into the portal, the institution's required to pay for their scholarship for the rest of that semester.
Okay.
So if they go into the portal, we have an obligation as an institution to provide their scholarship. After that academic semester's over, then they have to either matriculate or find another place to go.
Yeah.
And so that becomes a problem in itself for those that don't go. So where are they going to go? And you know, and it will hurt, I think, long term. We'll have to look at graduation rates and see how it impacts those rates. But those are things that I have concerns about because they do jump in the portal. So we do need to put some parameters around both the NIL and the transfer, because there's a number of student athletes still in the portal, and it's much broader as it relates to all the sports. The significance of the number of people in the portal is concerning.
One final question here. Alex from Denver was wondering about the motivation for somebody to sign up, sponsor out their business to sign up for the NIL exchange. I would think part of that's got to be, number one, you want your business to do well, but number two, you love this program, want to support it, correct?
Yeah, I think it's both, but the reality is our student athletes have a platform that a lot of people don't have, you know, with their social media connections, with their TikTok and all these things that I don't know what they are, but they have these platforms that they can promote a business or a company. And I think it's going to be good for a business, a charity, and even for an individual that has a need, that our student athletes using their platform will allow their business or their opportunity to grow.
You know, out of all the great information we've learned during Ralphie's Rundown with Rick, the least surprising is that Rick knows nothing about TikTok.
I don't.
We're going to do this 3 times a year. It's Ralphie's Rundown with Rick. He's the athletic director, Rick George. I'm voice of the bus, Mark Johnson. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.